one of my difficulties in a way about thinking about the journal has been around the special issue format and the what in a way I see two different models of journals, and what I would like for SAQ to do is to move between them. In one sense, there's the journal that doesn't have in a way its own identity, but would be the place, the sort of clearinghouse or open space, where people publish. And at the other pole is the kind of journal that I've had experience with before, only in France and Italy, which are essentially political journals that have their own line and in a way their own authorship. Too, you have a small stable in a way of authors. Of course, you would have some others, but mostly there's a core that has its own political project and a real continuity. And so there's the one that doesn't really have a project or direction or continuity, and the other that's in a way closed in its stable of authors. I've imagined and will experiment with this format change where the majority of each issue will still be a special issue, usually edited by an external special editor, and then each issue will also have a smaller portion that we'll call Against the Day, that will be able to provide a certain kind of continuity for the journal, and that these would be trying to address more contemporary political occasions. So Against the Day in that sense about certain like topics of opposition that have something to do with the contemporary event of coming out. So each issue will have a kind of, and I'm hoping there will be a certain kind of continuity of these Against the Day sections, against these small topical sections of political intervention, which will sometimes relate directly to the large part of the issue, but don't have to. In fact, it would be nice often if there were sort of more scholarly treatment in the large section of one issue that maybe is then taken up in a more interventionist state in another. Like I could imagine around, for instance, a UN climate summit, there could be one could have more scholarly treatment about climate change and the issues involved, and then you could have political or even activist intervention in the smaller sections, which it also occupy what seems to me an interesting space, and actually a space that I don't think exists enough right now for writing, which is that it is, of course, tied to a certain kind of academic reflection.
I think it's not only necessary, but exciting. SAQ, as I say, is not only open to things, and it really does take on the kind of character of a certain kind of imagining. And it may be due to a general editor, that's probably true to some extent, but it's also, that becomes kind of what talking as politics for one times. The journal generates a certain kind of expectation. So I think you're right to do that, because special issue formats work well, and they have worked well. And if I had had the time, I'm not sure I could have come up with a better format. I certainly couldn't have come up with this. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important that the journal goes somewhere else.
Now, in some ways, I don't want to change SAQ too much. In some way, each of us walk into this, even if we do it for 8 years, we're still only a small portion of the larger history of this. So I feel like there's some ways in which, and I wouldn't want that every 5 or 10 years a new general editor comes and completely changes the identity of the journal. So I think it's more appropriate to have a kind of shift or even dialogue with its tradition, that can that can move things along that way. But I do think that there is a large group of people in the academy who want and are able to do a certain kind of interventionist writing, that there isn't a space for it. In other words, I mean, some of them, there's a small group of Cornel West and maybe Judith Butler and some others that will write in the Nation or will have access to a different non-academic publishing. But there's also, I think, a much larger portion that and that wants to remain in the writing, to not become journalists, but to remain with a certain kind of specialized and academic reflection, but that can intervene on in contemporary political issues.
It'll be interesting to see if the Against the Day section actually proves generative, which is to say, out of that section, you think, now we need to address this in a different
right, so and then we'd have a special issue on that topic, right? And
that could be, I mean, again, those things you can never predict, but it's good to sort of anticipate something that happens. Which means that you can also, you can make some people unhappy because you can say, this is done so well for us, we think we should have a special issue and move people around. But I wouldn't advise that. But I do think it's useful to hold that open as a possibility. And
we're all limited to at least starting with, the people we know in the context we have, and so that's almost an automatic thing with the changing of editorship that I have that the people I know to draw on almost as default in France and Italy and Latin America are different. So there's a change already that way. But it is an interesting challenge, like you were saying, the generative nature of these, or the possibility of these interventionist Against the Day sections generating larger thematics. I would really like that to happen, because I think one of the challenges we face with all of academic journals now is about continuity and the identity of the journal, because since everything's available online, there's a tendency for people to read just specific essays, just specific authors, or even searching by keywords or something like that, and not either think about the coherence of the issue or even of the journal. And so I'm hoping that by drawing certain questions, even creating almost conversations, from issue to issue, and even using the difference between these, the longer scholarly section and the shorter interventionist section, to having a kind of relays that might draw readers into the continuity of the journal and the identity of its discussion, rather than simply picking articles individually.
We'll see. I mean, the challenges you're going to face are nothing like the challenges the journals ever faced before, and that seems right and appropriate to me. But there should be a new set of possibilities. Should be a new set of challenges and a new openness. I'm very glad you're taking over, because I think you're the right person for the journal at the right moment. It needs this, and it's a good time for me to go. So bon voyage, buena suerte, and all those good things, and good luck.